Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Shadoe Davis Show. This is Wednesday, July the 22nd, 2026. Special guest on the show tonight is Shawn Buckley. I'm sure you know Shawn from the National Citizens Inquiry, his years-long fight for natural health supplements and products in Canada. And now, Shawn is one of the guys behind the Allison Inquiry. I want to show you guys the Allison Inquiry website. This is it right here, covidtestimony.com. Allison Inquiry, giving Canadians a voice. Canadians who've been injured, and I'm sure you've seen some of the press conferences as well, right? I mean, these have been incredibly emotional events, and Shawn has been right there for each of them. Canadians who've been injured by a COVID-19 vaccine want to share their stories with members of parliament. Family members of persons injured by the COVID-19 vaccines want to share their stories. The purpose of the Allison Inquiry is to provide a neutral forum for Canadians to share their personal experiences of injuries to themselves or to others from the COVID-19 vaccine or vaccines. The mandate of the Allison Inquiry is to listen to Canadians. So before we bring Shawn on tonight, I put together a little video for you guys earlier this afternoon. I apologize for the red. It was out in the sun all afternoon, so it could be distracting. Please try to disregard it. I put together this video of some testimony that's already been presented through different social media channels from people you probably have seen before about their COVID vaccine injuries. And finally, at the end of this, we'll hear from Dean Allison himself. Here you go.
Trudeau said in a speech that nobody's going to be left behind. Nobody in Canada would be left behind. They were going to give CERB. They were going to help everybody. That's not what they've done with the vaccine injured people like me. We've been told to be quiet. Doctors have been told they will lose their license if they help. The media will not cover it. I want to be heard.
Now, from the vaccine, I have the most severe Bell's palsy case they've seen.
There is urgency. The cost cannot be measured only in terms of medical ailments. This injury robs you of the life you once dreamed of. It tears your body apart, cell by cell, and it does not stop with the injured. Our spouses, our children, our parents, our families, our loved ones, they carry these wounds alongside us. Without acknowledgement, there's no pathway to care. 5 years, half a decade, we've waited. While our health declined, the systems meant to protect us looked away. For many like myself, we want to share our stories while we still have the health and the strength to do so. Many are becoming less able to participate in advocacy efforts. We have encountered profound systemic gaps between adverse event reporting, ongoing safety surveillance, and support. This is vital to provide informed decision-making and recovery. Many have experienced fragmented care, financial hardship, dismissal, medical gaslighting, and even ridicule. And I can attest to this personally.
I was paralyzed by the COVID-19 shot. You will not hear my story on mainstream media. The Canadian government has left me fending for myself without the necessary treatments. Instead, they offered me MAID, which is medical assistance in dying. That's what they offered me after this was medically proven to be caused by my COVID-19 shot. That is not treatment, that is suicide or euthanasia. I would treat any human being better than that I even disliked. I don't just have to live without my legs anymore. I have to live with massive pain, a lesion in my spine, no bowel or bladder movements, somebody coming to get me dressed every day, having to be alone in bed when my fire alarm goes off, unable to move. This is not okay, and I need help. I'm appealing to anyone on social media to please share this video so that others like me can find help as well. If we don't speak up, we won't get the help.
We've also heard from members of parliament from different parts of the country who have been contacted by constituents looking for answers and looking to be heard. That is why emails have now been sent to every member of parliament, inviting them to engage with this process, informing them of the opportunity for their constituents to participate. If you are someone who believes you or a loved one suffered a vaccine injury, I encourage you to reach out to your local member of parliament. We invite MPs from all parties to come to the hearings, whether for an afternoon, a day, or the entire week. This should not be a partisan issue. It's about listening to Canadians. Today, I want to highlight once again why these stories matter. This is not about relitigating every decision made during the unprecedented public health crisis. It's not about assigning blame. It's about listening. It's about learning. It's about ensuring that when Canadians face the next public health emergency, we're better prepared because we had the courage and the honesty to examine experiences of Canadians. Canadians deserve transparency. Canadians deserve accountability.
I would tend to agree with that. Shawn, thank you for making the time. Welcome back to the show. It's been a while.
Oh, Shadoe, it's just a pleasure to be on your show. It has been a while. So
happy to see your face again, my friend, and happy to see the work that you've been doing. During that clip, we played the Michelle Wharton testimony, obviously, from the press conference you guys did a couple of weeks ago. And everybody got to see you standing next to her, and you looked incredibly emotional during her testimony.
well,
After
you
all of
also,
the, I'm
you
sorry.
also have, you also have to understand, I'm watching her back in case she falls, because she has no feeling from about maybe 3 or 4 inches below the hip down, and her legs are moving. She's having to move them because she's also got POTS, and she could pass out if she doesn't do this. So, but you can't watch that without being emotional. But I'm also have to watch her in case I have to catch her.
Right. You went through, I'm going to say, a year and a half, 2 years of the National Citizens Inquiry, where you sat and you listened to some incredibly emotional testimony from people all across the country. Are you ready for another round of this?
No. Shadoe, I think I was going to say a word up. Both my wife Teresa and I think we're probably still have PTSD from the National Citizens Inquiry. And this one's just as bad. I've been working all day just on witness prep, and it's tearing me up. We had because this is volunteers again, right? So this is like we're doing it all over again. In fact, the 2 ladies sorting the witnesses have worked doing that at the NCI and worked doing that for the NHPPA for the health show. We had a Zoom call about 3 weeks ago, I think it is now, with the whole team. Like the whole team, we're having this Zoom call. And I asked the two ladies doing the witness sorting, how are you doing? And one of them just breaks into tears and weeps for the rest of the call. It's awful.
How many inquiries have you had about testimony? I mean, I heard a number like 58,000 or something, and I think that was maybe a little bit high. Have you had thousands of people reach out?
Oh, you mean to apply for this one?
Yes.
No, we're probably around 800.
Okay. 800.
Yeah, I think you're getting that figure. That's the number of people that have applied to the vaccine injury program.
Oh, okay, right. I'm sorry about
or
that.
are showing up. Like I think that actually might be. I think Health Canada's figure for vaccine injured persons was around 60,000, and we have. I mean, obviously, we all know that's low because every time a study's done on a passive surveillance system like that, like Harvard did one on the VAERS system, and their conclusion was that it's underreported by about 100. Well, it's way, way easier to access the VAERS program than it is Health Canada's adverse reaction program. So when Health Canada admits to 60,000 people or reports of a vaccine injury, Lord knows what the real figure is.
Well, we know that there has been all kinds of runaround, right? Like the people who have suspected a vaccine injury. People like Kayla Pollock, for example, who had to fight and advocate for herself through the medical system for months and months, years and years even, for a doctor to finally say, okay, it's a vaccine injury. And the same with Michelle. She's been through so much. And Kayla, Carrie Sakamoto, she's been through hell. All of those people have been through. And I wish that I could have put all of the vaccine injured people on that clip, but it was already 5 minutes as it is. People are asking, Shawn, what is the difference between the NCI and this particular inquiry that you guys are doing?
Yeah, so first of all, it's an interesting question anyway, because Shadoe, when my wife Teresa and I were the main people running the NCI, the idea that we were finished when we finished those COVID hearings, I mean, the whole purpose of that was to give people a voice, hopefully to bring about change. And I think the NCI made a huge difference. If, for no other reason is it kind of gave us strength and community. The people that did watch it, that was such an incredible experience for me personally, but giving people a voice, it was a fantastic honor. And your question kind of implied well, what's the difference? It's just some people are saying, haven't we done this? And it's like, I'm sorry, you had Michelle Wharton on there. My first experience with Michelle was, it's the week after the first press conference. So we held the first press conference on June 4th. And my wife Teresa and I share space for our offices. And I come in and Teresa's got some weeping lady on the speakerphone, which turns out to be Michelle. And Michelle's just weeping. And Michelle is actually just expressing a huge concern to tell her story in front of MPs. And she's concerned she's got to do it soon because she's not sure if she's going to be alive much longer. And, and then I phoned Michelle the next day because I wanted permission to share stuff like this. And she gave me permission and I got her story myself, and I've read her form. These people are desperate. Listen, Shadoe, for the whole NCI. So when was it when we went public with Preston Manning announcing us at a press conference? I think it was it February? Teresa says February. It was before February. Let's say it was. Anyway, from that time when we started taking applications to the end of the COVID hearings, which ran for months, we did 8 cities, 3 days in each city, and we didn't run every week because we had a couple of holidays. And we were doing all issues, lay witness applications in total. We either had, it was 902 or 906. That was on all issues. We likely didn't have 100 applications on vaccine injury. So we got in the first 2 days after our press conference on the Allison Inquiry, in the first 2 days, we had 500 applications.
I find it amazing that the news of this inquiry has spread so quickly. And I do recall watching the first press conference where you came out and Dean also came out and said, we don't want this to be partisan. We want it to be a nonpartisan experience. We don't want it to get political. And the very next hour, my MP, a liberal guy, and I don't know how he won in this riding, but he did. He comes out and starts talking about how the vaccine saved so many lives. And
Allison or whatever.
Doctor, he's a doctor, right? So when you put a doctor up there,
but his last name starts with an E, right?
Olson, yeah.
Yeah. I struggle with that one. Oh, okay. So I saw a post if I recall it correctly, that because he was attacking Dean viciously, saying like, where were you when I was saving lives in the emergency ward during COVID? And basically, how dare you promote vaccine hesitancy?
Right.
And I saw another one. In fact, I pulled it off had it pulled off the X yesterday because I'm using it in an article that I'm writing, where he basically is saying that this is shameful and disgraceful because, and how dare you promote vaccine hesitancy? Now, Shadoe, you got a name call when you're afraid. Because the problem that he has, and here's where he's doing the disservice, and I call it a disservice, and I would be glad to debate him if he wants to come on your show with me. So Rasmussen did a poll in the United States in September of 2025. So, we're almost approaching, we're closer to a year than not. 56.6% of Americans polled by Rasmussen believe that the COVID vaccine caused not death, not like, does Aunt Mary's cousin's friend know somebody who died? Not death, significant death. Like that was the key. It was significant death. Now, we don't have a similar poll in Canada, but certainly we'll have similar death numbers. Well, what's the number of people who feel the vaccine caused significant harm? And death is significant harm. So if over half believe the vaccines cause significant death, what's the percentage that cause significant harm? That's your vaccine hesitancy. You're going to have vaccine hesitancy. You're going to have, total disregard and no confidence in public health authorities, period, until we have this conversation. So when somebody like that's saying, how dare you create vaccine hesitancy, we're not having an honest conversation. We're just totally in name calling, because you're going to have, you already have extreme vaccine hesitancy. You just look at it in the boosters, because these vaccines are so good that you have to keep taking boosters. So we have a huge problem of confidence in this nation, and we're not going to come together. We're not going to have confidence in our public health institutions. We're literally in a crisis. We're in a public health institution crisis until we have this conversation. And I say to these people, including in the freedom community that have been, vicious on this inquiry, I say to you, how dare you? How dare you prevent a conversation where we're allowing vaccine-injured persons tell their story, because we're still not having the conversation in the public space, and they're being treated by lepers, and they're dying, and they're suffering terribly because they're not allowed to have proper treatments. You can't treat them right until you identify the problem. And some of them, the system acknowledges its vaccine injury, and there's clear protocols, and they can't have them because in our socialized medical system, where we don't accept vaccine injury, oh, you can't have this treatment for that. You can have it for other conditions. We offer the treatment. It's there, but you can't have it. And they can't have it because we're not having this conversation. And, I was on a podcast last week with the medical doctor. And I asked the medical doctor, I said, look, it's like July 2026. Is it possible for a medical doctor in Canada to honestly speak about the COVID-19 vaccines, that they cause harm, that we should be addressing the harm it causes? And like the medical doctor was, no, that they'd be professionally disciplined and likely would lose their license. Well, how are we going to have this conversation, Shadoe, unless we have a brave MP who's willing to publicly call vaccine injured persons and have this conversation. So can I tell you how this came about and just how cool it is that you would say, I can't believe how it's getting out there.
Yes. You know, I was going to ask you, I mean, because so many people have been so frustrated with, you know, especially the vaccine injured, obviously. People who have been completely debilitated by this thing, and the lack of political willingness to even listen is mind-blowing to me, especially as you say, you know, all this time later on. We know what some of these, we completely discount the Liberals and the NDP from this, because they are absolutely politically motivated, ideologically motivated. And for anybody to say, you know, like Doug Elfson, for example, for anybody to say that this vaccine was causing harm is absolutely against their commandments. But the conservatives,
go ahead.
Yep.
I think it, you know, first of all, I learned a long time ago that somebody that you might be fighting today could be your ally in something tomorrow. And I've learned through this process that we live in a bubble, Shadoe. Like, we're in what I call the freedom community, and we have ate, drank, breathed COVID for 5 years now. And almost everyone watching this show, if we say PCR test or, you know, dying with COVID, not of COVID, like, just to name some of the very early themes, we all know what we're talking about. And we assume that everyone else knows what we're talking about. Yeah. And so I'm going to talk about bubbles in a second. I'm going to start to say how this came about, and then I'm going to get into bubbles, because people have to understand how much of a bubble we're in and how there's another bubble that we're not in. And people are people. Like, if you and I were in that bubble, we'd be acting the exact same way. And if the people in that bubble were in our bubble, they'd be acting the exact same way as we are. And I really think we all need to understand how much of a bubble each of us are in. And I didn't understand. So Teresa and I are last October driving across Canada, dragging the Health Freedom van, holding events. I saw you in Winnipeg.
I couldn't stay in that room.
Sometime in October.
That room is absolutely claustrophobic for me. I can't stay in that room. I was there for 20 minutes and I wanted to sit and listen to you guys, and I just couldn't take it anymore.
But we met, and thank you for coming. Yes, and it was a pleasure to see you there. And we end up in Ottawa on October 23rd. It's a Saturday. We're dropping off the third largest paper petition in Canadian history to MP Blaine Calkins. And thank you, Blaine Calkins, for doing that and entering them. And now we're planning on going to Montreal the next day and visit family. And somebody had been bugging us. You got to meet with this MP Dean Allison person. And we finally agreed. So we stayed an extra day. Couldn't have been a Saturday. Yeah, it had to have been a Saturday, because that's when we had so I mean, maybe it was a Monday, stay over a couple of extra days. Yeah, it probably was, because we would have resolved to go to Bikers Church that Sunday. So Monday, we're staying an extra day. We meet with MP Dean Allison. Well, don't you know, like, he's like a kindred spirit. We just like the guy. We have a wonderful meeting. You know, obviously we're talking about natural health products and stuff like that, but he says to us, I've been thinking about holding an inquiry where we just listen to vaccine injured persons. Right?
He said that to you.
He said that to us.
Whoa.
Well, he knows who we are.
You're talking to the right guy.
So we say to him, well, if you decide to do that, we may be able to help you, because we may not be willing to help him, right? Like, we don't know. We don't know him yet. We don't know what the idea is. We don't know what the parameters. We're now like, we don't know if we have time. But that was it, right? Like, so then Teresa feels a few months later the need to go out and poke him and, like, start the dialogue. Do you want to do this? And so we're having this dialogue. We're having phone meetings, we're having Zoom meetings. I remember one Zoom meeting with one of his staff who was just so cold to the idea. It was crazy, because that person's job was protecting Dean's career. And this isn't something that's going to, you know, is obvious to protect his career. So in this process where Dean's trying to figure out if he's willing to do this, and we're trying to figure out, okay, if you are, what does it look like, and are we willing to help you? He says, well, you've got to start meeting with MPs. Like, is there anyone else out there that would possibly sit with me? Like, am I going to be in a committee room by myself listening to vaccine injured persons? Which is a good question. So we're meeting with MPs to see, is it absolutely possible that you would agree to sit in a committee room and just listen? Just listen. Like, okay, now I'm learning in this process a couple of things about MPs. Now, the first thing I'm learning is there's another bubble out there. Do you know, Shadoe, that there is a large group of people in Canada, a large group, they're bigger than the freedom community, who follow the mainstream media? They haven't found they have not found the Shadoe Davis podcast yet. Let's hope God blesses them with this knowledge sooner than later.
Amen.
Okay, they believe the COVID-19 vaccine saved lives. They believe, hey, they know, this group of people in this other bubble, they know Canadians are injured. Because it's all around us. It doesn't matter what bubble you're in. You can't deny that you or people around you are suffering. That dang long COVID.
Right.
Well, okay, now, but let's back up a second. I'm talking to an expert yesterday, and there is long COVID, which is caused by, for those people that they didn't deal with the COVID virus right away, you know, when it's in your upper respiratory tract, and no harm done, you've just recovered like a regular flu. If it got systemically through you, then it caused damage, because that spike protein it's a wrecking ball in you. In the same way that the vaccine caused systemic damage, because for those people that know their body really did start manufacturing the spike protein, which is a wrecking ball all through your body, because those lipid nanoparticles went everywhere.
Yeah.
There's a subset that long COVID exists, but the difference between that bubble and ours is they believe all of the injuries are caused by long COVID. Whereas in our bubble, we believe most of the injuries are caused by the vaccine. And I honestly, truly believe that, Shadoe, that most of the injuries around us, I can accept that long COVID's real, but in my world, most of the injuries are caused by the vaccine. Okay, can we accept there's another bubble out there?
We have to. We know there is.
Okay.
We know there is.
When you believe things now, and my gosh, with COVID, we got polarized on this. We got polarized, vaccine good or vaccine bad. And so the belief's even more entrenched. You know, Shadoe, if the evidence started to come out, let's just hypothetically speak here. I'm just trying to make a point. So if the evidence started to come out, my gosh, you know, the vaccines did cause harm, but like way less than we thought. Like this long COVID thing's like super real. It was more prevalent than we possibly imagined. Look how we actually got fooled thinking the vaccine was causing when it's long COVID. Like, so let's say that evidence was starting coming out. Do you know the first thing I would say? I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I do not believe it, because my mind's made up and I have a different belief, and I'm a human being. And for me to actually change my mind, which actually requires physical rewiring, like the term change your mind literally means your mind physically gets changed because you have a belief and you have to rewire to accept another belief. I'm going to have to chew over it. I'm going to have evidence. It's going to be a process for me. Well, you know what? It's going to be a process for that other bubble to accept that the majority of the injuries that they are attributing to long COVID are vaccine injuries.
I have to ask.
Step is the idea being introduced.
Yes, and that's what this inquiry will do. Hopefully. Getting
It
back
already
to
is. I will share that in a minute.
yes, let's get back to Dean. When you sat there and we're saying Dean sitting there, Dean sitting there saying, "Well, I got to be alone sitting in this
Let's
room."
get back to that story. So
Okay.
we're meeting with MPs, finding that they don't know anything about COVID. Like I remember actually sharing with one MP. I won't name them. I'm talking about how the drug approval test was changed and they didn't have to prove safety and efficacy. You could literally see them turning white, and they're like, because they were. But if I had that, I'd had a conversation with that MP about the exact same type of thing a year or two ago, and they weren't listening. But now they were listening. So they're in this.
Wait, hold it. How did you get them to listen? Did you tie them down? Did you tie them into a chair? Like do the old Clockwork Orange?
We've had the conversation before, but their mind wasn't open to the possibility.
Why
and
now though?
Like, you could see they were receiving the information and horrified.
So something changed then in some of these people. Like maybe the bubble that they're in has been burst just a little bit. Maybe there's some holes opening in the bubble.
And maybe the bubble we've been in has burst a little bit. And let's talk about reconciliation in a sec. But we'll go with the history. The next thing I learned about MPs is they are terrified about of just publicly listening, right? Like, early on, the freedom community's gotten used to this idea now, and we're not being attacked the way we were. But early on, it was kind of like, well, you're only listening to vaccine injured people. Well, my gosh, if we can get that room filled with MPs just listening to vaccine injured persons, that will be like, Jesus walking on water. It will be such a miracle because politically, they're horrified. So let's get back then to Dean. So we're having this conversation. And, I'm a believer in Jesus and Dean's a believer in Jesus. So we can talk to each other a way that I can't talk to people with a different paradigm. There's like this one call where he's basically explaining to Teresa and I reason after reason after reason why we can't do this. Teresa and I are, both thinking, okay, this is done. And I stop the conversation, Shadoe, and I say to Dean, you're focusing on the wrong thing. You're telling us why this can't happen. When the only issue, and again, just believer to believer, the only issue is does God want you to do this? Because if he does, then you do it. And if he doesn't, then you can tell us all the reasons why you can't. And so we actually ended the call, said to him, you take as much time as you need to pray about it and answer that question. Call ended. Teresa and I actually think this is done. It was exciting while it was a possibility, but it's done. And we had resigned ourselves to that. So this is finished. About 10 days later, we're driving back from BC. We get a text from Dean, call me. So we, stop in Jasper National Park where there's cell signal. And we call him and he says, I'm supposed to do this and I'm going to do it regardless of the consequences, because he was really worried he would get kicked out of the Conservative caucus. He's been in that caucus as a Conservative MP for 22 years. And he was very concerned of two things. One, that he would get kicked out of the Conservative caucus. And two, that the mainstream media would just make a monkey out of him. And, but he believed at that point, I'm supposed to do this. So those possible consequences don't matter, because once you think you're supposed to do something, off you go. So we said, this is a Saturday. And we found out that he and his wife were going to be in Edmonton the following Saturday. We said, well, why don't we meet in person? because Teresa and I actually know if his wife isn't on side, we're not going to get through this ride together anyway.
Right.
Because we know the attacks are going to be vicious. And we know it's going to be a difficult process to go through and a lot of work. So, and then that gives Teresa and I a week to pray, like, are we supposed to be doing this, right? So the four of us have a breakfast meeting. We all believe we're supposed to do this, so we commit to doing this. So that is the Allison Inquiry. It was 4 people deciding we're going to do this. Now, it's clearly not a government inquiry, and your MP, who is also on the Standing Committee of Health, has shown us that the government doesn't want this to go ahead with his, you know, I think I'm justifying describing his attacks on Dean as vicious.
I agree.
Right?
Yep.
So we know this isn't a government inquiry, and the government does not want this to go ahead. And we've got to navigate that. It's not a Conservative Party thing. I mean, I haven't spoken to anyone in any party. Teresa and I are organizing this with, you know, largely with the main volunteers we've all worked with before on other projects. I don't even know what the political affiliation is of any of them. And Teresa and I don't belong to any party. So what happened is we've incorporated a not-for-profit. So the website, you know, COVID Testimony Association, that's just the name of the not-for-profit. But if you search on the internet, Allison Inquiry, it will just get you there. So it doesn't matter if you search Allison Inquiry. That's the easiest for people to remember.
Yeah.
So here we are. And we have to do this before Parliament resumes, or we can't use the committee room because they're all booked once. So it's like, now we got a deadline. So, okay, we're early September. We picked September, the week, you know, September 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th, because we've gotten past the long weekend. People have got their kids back in school. Now we can go. And we're just before Parliament resumes.
I thought that was a good choice. And by the way, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Shawn. Please continue after this, but there's people mentioning here in the comments that I haven't seen it. Where can I find this inquiry? Well, it's not until September the 8th through the 11th.
Right.
Which we'll be broadcasting as well.
But if you go to the website, the 2 press conferences are there.
Yes.
And especially the second one with Michelle Wharton, who we just let have most of the press conference, be sharing her story. It will blow your mind. And then, okay, so do you want me to get back to the story?
Yes, please. I'm sorry to interrupt you in the first place.
Yeah,
I just wanted to let them know.
So we pick June 4th to have our press conference to announce it. And Teresa and I get on a plane to Ottawa the day before on June 3rd. Dean hasn't released the press release yet. You're supposed to do it like 4 or 5 days before, but he's hanging on to it because he wants to talk to the National Caucus first on the Wednesday so that nobody's surprised, and he wants to do that before the press release goes out. So we don't actually even know when we're boarding the plane if this is going to go ahead. But there had been one really positive development is Dean had arranged to have an in-person meeting with Pierre Poilievre the week before, and he tells Poilievre, you know, what he's doing. And, you know, it's funny, you know, because God goes before us all the time. Poilievre says, you know, I keep getting approached by people that are vaccine injured, desperate to tell me their stories. Like, if what you're doing is just listening to vaccine injured persons tell their stories, I'm not going to interfere with that. Like, from a Conservative Party standpoint, I mean, you can, as a Conservative MP, we're not going to stop you from listening to vaccine injured persons. Okay, that was huge because there's that's, you know, like if, you know, Dean doesn't know who Teresa and I are. He hasn't seen the website yet. He doesn't know how we work. He can't be sure we're not nut bars. Like, they're taking a political gamble here because if this fell on its face or was really crazy or whatever, surely that would reflect negatively on the Conservative Party.
Yeah, Shawn, but I mean, come on. I mean, like, there's all kinds of video out there of the NCI and the work you did and all of the commissioners. I mean, that in it of itself, to me anyway, would absolutely solidify your reputation as a guy who's standing up looking for the truth. And if he hadn't seen any of that stuff, like, I don't know what else to say.
I-
But then again, there we go back to the bubbles.
Well,
right?
maybe they vetted us better than we thought. Like, because it was funny, you know, we hold that press conference on June 4th. I think the website was finished that morning. Right? Like,
Good.
I mean, it was, and so I drafted the you know, terms of reference and the rules. Like, if we're gonna ask MPs to come, they have to know what's the box that we're in. And if we're going to ask the public to volunteer and we're going to ask the public to donate, they have to know, okay, what is this, right?
Yep.
So clearly it from the beginning, the idea was to have it completely nonpartisan because we want MPs to listen to vaccine injured persons. This shouldn't be a party event, and the Liberals haven't made it a party event. Like, you know, your MP and some other, and at least one other Liberal MP has gone hard after Dean, but that doesn't mean that the party's publicly said no, right?
Right.
And I think we're at this place where this is going to force the conversation. So I'm hoping they'll actually make the determination that maybe we should participate. Right? So it's nonpartisan. I drafted the rules also because, again, we want MPs from all parties to be free to go. That actually prohibits the panel members from making any findings. Now, Shadoe, we're only booked for 4 days anyway. And after 4 days of hearing people, you don't have enough information to make findings anyway. So you'd look dumb if you did. But notwithstanding that, the rules say you can't make any findings. We're just here to listen, and that's that. But the rules allow us to toss in the odd expert to frame things, which we're gonna do.
Have you already tracked down these experts? Or are you going to name names, or are you going to wait?
We are not. My wife would be very cold to me if I was to name any names, because we've been under such attack, like it's, you know, at a higher level than she or I have ever experienced before. So we're just thinking, to avoid sabotage, we want to keep that, you know, under the lid right now. But we're just planning on a handful. We have picked them. Not all of them have confirmed, but hopefully that will be very soon. And, you know, we've started to pick vaccine injured persons. So now I'm just at the very beginning stages of doing the final review, because I'm not involved in the picking.
Right.
Because really, in all fairness, like we've got, you know, those two ladies that are reading every single application and figuring out how to grade them. And I don't want to interfere with that because they're the experts. They're the ones living in it. So, but then, you know, if I interview somebody and, you know, there's any red flags, or, you know, they just simply can't communicate or anything like that, you know, then I can recommend that they send some others my way. But they're doing the sorting when we're at that stage. But back to the story then, the genesis, and what's so positive about this. So Dean tells National Caucus the Wednesday before the Thursday that we announced this at a press conference. And he's,
wait. When you say National Caucus, we're talking about a caucus meeting of all the Conservative MPs.
Of the Conservatives, yeah. So all of the Conservative MPs are having a caucus meeting scheduled on the Wednesday. And Dean is deliberately not telling them until the day before. And it's why he hasn't released the press conference, because he doesn't want them to interfere. Like, when we hold the press conference, we plant the flag. He's already decided he's going ahead regardless. But, you know, why give too much time for mischief, so to speak, right? Better to ask for forgiveness than, you know, permission. But he's obligated to tell them. So he tells them the day before. And as he related to me, Poilievre stands up and says, I've got no problem with any of you participating in this.
Wow.
Okay, that's huge, because it means that the Conservative MPs do not have to worry about party backlash if they choose to participate. But remember, they're all afraid. They think this is a political liability to publicly go against the narrative. So will we hold this press conference? And again, anyone can go on to the Allison Inquiry site, and there's a tab for press conferences, and the 2 conferences are there. Dean has not a large social media presence. He posts 2 posts on Facebook, not X, left wing out there, Facebook, just about holding this inquiry. Within 24 hours, he has over 1 million views. And the topic explodes. It explodes. Now people are coming to him asking, hey, I got diagnosed with stage 3 cancer. Could it be caused by the, it's like this whole new idea has been introduced into this bubble that you and I aren't in. And all of a sudden the conversation exploded. Now your MP is now threatened by this and is personally attacking Dean. We talked about that earlier. You know, where were you when I was saving lives in the emergency room? How dare you create vaccine hesitancy? We've already spoken about that. You know, even a year ago, you know, the left mob would have just been all over Dean in such large numbers. Like, remember, you couldn't speak. We would just be silenced on social media. Well, that mob came out, Shadoe, but something else came out. A counter mob came out that was larger, saying, no, we have to have this conversation.
That's awesome.
So there was a conversation. It was an angry conversation, but there was a conversation. And it's out there. Like, even in the freedom community, nobody, not a single person was talking about vaccine injury. It was a dead and buried issue. It was gone, and now it's not gone. You know, we have the second press conference with Michelle Wharton. Juno News posts a clip, like, I don't know, 2.5 minutes. The last time I checked, it was over 1.6 million views. And my wife, Teresa, was telling me, she was monitoring the comments. And she was saying, you know, the negative comments, a lot of them are about, well, I don't believe that it's vaccine injured. Well, Shadoe, I don't believe that this is all long COVID. Like, that's what I would be saying if that idea was being introduced to me. It's the first part of having the conversation. Never, like, I get the freedom communities. Well, like, I want justice. I want accountability. I want there to be charges. Well, wait a second. The first step is, these people believe the vaccine saved lives. These people believe that long COVID is what's causing all of this harm. And because of that belief, they actually believe, honestly, as you or I would, if we believed the vaccine saved lives and we believed these injuries were long COVID, thank goodness for the vaccine, which minimized COVID. And then we would feel ethically obligated, as they do, to try and prevent vaccine hesitancy to save lives. Like, if we had that belief ethically, so it's really important for us to understand that these people are acting the same way we would act if we had that belief. And if we expected somebody to come into our bubble and convince us that, no, the vaccine didn't cause a whole bunch of harm, it's long COVID, well, they better be, first of all, gentle with us. They better not be angry. They better not be demanding justice.
All I would say is, please bring lots of evidence to back up your claims instead of just whatever you saw on television. And you know, it's interesting, Shawn, when you say it's been 5 years and this whole topic was dead. I've had this conversation with people close to me, right? This is not in any bubble, right? This is just going back to family and friends. And because this hasn't come up in such a long time, we could kind of get back to a semblance of normal, our previous relationship before the whole thing happened in the first place. But, a few times the topic does come up. And I just kind of sit there and go, okay, let's see what these people are saying.
Mhm.
And now they're not so convinced that it was the right thing to do, because it's almost like they're apologetic when they say how many shots they got. Matter of fact, one buddy of mine said, I only got the one shot. And his wife had to stand up and say, no, you got two, remember? And he goes, I don't know. I don't think I did. So now they're denying even getting these shots in the first place, whereas before they were on Team Pfizer or Team Moderna. So I think time and an absence of this topic being discussed has let a lot of these people and their logical thought processes finally emerge to the surface again. And what's coming out is a lot of questions. So this is very good timing, in my opinion.
Well, the timing's perfect. And I think another thing that's happened is sure, the mainstream narrative is saying long COVID, long COVID, long COVID. And, we got so much safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective, that even when you're thinking about injuries, the vaccine wouldn't even come up as a possibility. But notwithstanding that, Shadoe, is, a lot of people are coming to the conclusion by themselves that no, it is the vaccine. And you and I are hearing people saying that. My wife Teresa had a call, I think it was late last week, with a travel agent that we're hoping to engage to help us with travel arrangements. And the agent was asking, well, like, what is this about? Oh, and Teresa's sharing with her. And the travel agent says, oh, well, I'm injured by long COVID. And I'm actually in a long COVID support group. And Teresa said, oh, well, when did your symptoms occur? Oh, like right after the vaccine. And, Teresa continues the conversation. And, 5 minutes later, the lady comes to understand, no, I'm vaccine injured. It's not long COVID. We've got to have the conversation, and it's happening, and it's crazy good. And now we just have to because still, this is trending, but thank you for having us on the show, because
Of course.
we need several things to happen. So first of all, we need everyone to learn about the Allison Inquiry. So start sharing it. We need MPs to show up. So on our website, we have a section on how do you engage your MP to have them attend. So we tell you how. And if you're not willing to have a meeting or make a phone call, we've got letters you can use if you're not willing to even write your own letter. But the MPs, like Shadoe, we have one of the biggest committee rooms on Parliament Hill. We literally could have 40 MPs sitting around that table every day. We could add tables to have more than 40. And wouldn't it be cool if every day there were different ones there? Because there's going to be different Canadians, and we're hoping that every injured person there, that their MP is going to be there listening to them, because that would send a real strong message of support to their ridings. Like, MPs are elected from ridings. So, we're hoping that for every witness that testifies, that the MP from that riding will be there. And there'll be, hopefully, if, again, we're all volunteers, hopefully we're organized enough to make sure, like, hey, on this day, you should know that a person from your riding is going to be testifying and really wants you to be there. But if we could have that room filled, we will change Parliament. Now, because this has exploded, Dean Allison, MP Dean Allison's social media is eclipsing every other MP's social media on any issue. And everyone's taken notice. And for sure, the policy wonks in every party in Parliament are going to be watching this inquiry. For sure. And for sure, the, several MPs, even if they don't attend, are going to be watching. And they're going to be changed, because, you watch the NCI, you cannot watch people sharing tragic stories and not be changed. And, we're hoping that after this inquiry, that every group, including especially the doctors and nurses, the medical groups, that all of a sudden they'll have permission. Right now, they're going to get professionally disciplined if they have that conversation. But if we can have MPs having that conversation, surely to goodness then, no doctor should be disciplined or no nurse for having that conversation in the coffee room at the hospital, and for having that conversation with their patients, because the patients are going to be demanding it, because the patients are going to be watching. And this could be what we've all been waiting for. And so we need people. If you are willing to volunteer, email us and say, I'm willing to volunteer, because we've got a plan, we've got materials. If you're willing to pester all MPs to show up, not just your own, we want to engage you peacefully and with love. But if we can create that pressure and get them at the table, then for sure we will turn this around. And then the other thing we're asking for, hey, this is citizen run, citizen organized, and citizen funded. And right now, so we're, I don't know, well, we're live. Okay. So what is it? Is it July
22nd.
22nd,
Yep.
2026? We've covered our expenses to date, but we don't have any money. And so today I called a witness that we've selected, and I said, we don't have any money. We want to cover everyone's travel expenses, because Shadoe, we do. I want to cover the flights and the hotels. But this afternoon I had a call with a tragic injured person, teenager, now permanently disabled, in a wheelchair, and said, is there any way you can cover your travel expenses? Well, my mom and I talked about it. We think we can cover the flights. Can you cover accommodation? Somehow we'll do that. Yes, we will cover your accommodation. But what a shame that we're not even covering their flights. And we need to be doing that. So, I'm a volunteer, Teresa's a volunteer, all of the key people are volunteers. We got to pay for our website guys. We got to pay for our social media posters. We got to pay for our AV costs. And surely we got to pay for travel for the vaccine injured. So please go to Allison Inquiry and donate. Please.
There it is.
So that we don't have to I don't have to continue to be having these conversations with vaccine injured witnesses. But the funny thing is they want to get there even if they've got to figure out how the heck to cover their flights. And that in itself, I'm just saying we should be doing everything that we can. And then Shadoe Davis, there's another thing that's brand new. Somebody like you, alternative media, can you get into a committee room without press credentials? Not a chance. But in this committee room, through MP Dean Allison, if you let Teresa know that you're coming, we can get you in there. So we want to have, if the mainstream media isn't going to show up, and some of them might. Global ran a positive story. Like Global ran a story about a vaccine injured lady who, severely injured, who basically couldn't get vaccine compensation from the vaccine injury program. And then said, oh, by the way, there's this Allison Inquiry listening to vaccine injured persons. It was like, I didn't believe it when Teresa told me there was a positive story. I had to go watch it. And then CTV has had some, we'll call them negative stories. One of the attacks to try and get this to stop is there's a theme, they're attacking, Pierre Poilievre's lost control of his caucus. Look at Dean Allison's doing this and another MP's doing that. And so Poilievre's chief of staff ends up on CTV and they're, Poilievre's lost control. And the guy's saying, Poilievre's chief of staff, and it resonated with me because it was common sense. It's like, really can't, we've got all these MPs. They have different interests, different focuses. Like, really, we can't allow conservative MPs to look into different issues? Like, really? So that's the conversation they're having. But CTV isn't ridiculing the idea of listening to vaccine injured persons.
Right.
And so really, I took that as positive press.
It's
Now,
amazing.
The
It's
Globe
amazing
and
what
Mail
real
and Toronto Star and all, oh, they've, you know, we're vaccine deniers, and some of the social media attacks have just been like on, you know, do you want me to name names? No, okay. The person doesn't want me to name names. So personal attacks on some of the volunteers have been, you know, worse than I've ever seen.
Let me ask you this. Going back to the day that Dean told the caucus, the national caucus, that he was going to go ahead and do this, did he ever tell you at all what the response, what the reaction, the immediate reaction of the entire caucus was? Was it positive, negative? Were they dumbfounded? Did they say nothing? Like, what was that?
No, I don't, but there was reaction afterwards that was interesting. So, you know, and he did share with me that Pierre Poilievre had said, you know, it's okay if you guys want to participate in this. So meaning there's not going to be a problem. I'm not going to give you grief if you participate, conservative MPs. But Dean did relate to me and afterwards that some MPs were coming up to him, and you know, he would share their names, saying, how did you get permission to do this? Like, I can't believe you're doing this. Like, I can't believe this is going to happen.
Wow.
So remember, I was telling you, MPs, like, let's say you're a doctor, Shadoe, and I'm a doctor. We could honestly have a conversation saying, like, we really can't talk because then we can't help our patients. It's the minute we step out, we're going to get hammered. MPs are hearing in their offices people sharing with them that they're vaccine injured. They're not afraid to listen in private. It's this idea of going public. And why would the MPs feel different than the doctors? You know, because the MPs would be worried. Listen, if you're a Liberal MP, do you think that you're going to hold this inquiry? No, you would get kicked out of the party, wouldn't you?
No, because Carney needs his majority, so he's not going to be kicking anybody
You know
out.
what I'm saying? Like, you know,
Yes,
you
yes.
wouldn't even dare it, right?
Yeah.
And why wouldn't you think the mainstream media is going to try to make a complete monkey out of you? And I think it surprised people because, like I say, you know, your MP came out, you know, with the gloves off, and the mob was with him. And then this other group that was bigger, I don't want to use the word mob, shows up and supports Dean.
Yeah. That's
And
big.
says, no, we need this inquiry. We need to have this. Another interesting thing is Shadoe, the MPs themselves are injured. Like in the US, senators in Congress got an exemption. MPs in Canada didn't. And there were just a handful of MPs that didn't. And they got excluded from Parliament, Dean Allison included. He couldn't go to Parliament because, and he got treated poorly. I was going to say something else. You can guess what I was going to say. So it's the night before the press conference. Teresa and I have just flown into Ottawa, and Dean is out for supper with 3 other MPs. And he's, oh, you guys, you've arrived. Do you want to join us for supper? So we joined them for supper. Well, Teresa's sitting beside this female MP. Well, why are you guys here? Oh, we're here for this thing. Well, she spends the whole night, supper, telling Teresa about her COVID-19 vaccine injuries.
The MP.
The MP. And then the MP beside me, I'm talking to him and this other male MP, and somehow the topic comes up, why are you, oh, this. Well, the MP right beside me starts describing his vaccine injuries, which I'm not going to share on your show, but they were shocking.
Wow.
Now, they've resolved in his case, not in the case of the lady, but they've resolved in his case, but they were pretty significant. So
That's
2 out of
interesting.
3 MPs sitting at that table that were new to us were injured themselves and knew they were injured by the COVID-19 vaccine. And I hope we're giving them permission not only to listen to other vaccine injured Canadians, but to share their stories themselves and to have this conversation.
Wouldn't that be something, Shawn? If you got vaccine injured MPs from whatever party up there telling their story. Wow. That might change things in this country. That might get the narrative reversed somehow or slowly.
I actually hadn't thought of the inquiry calling them, because that might look, especially if they were conservative MPs, it might look now that this is becoming a party event. I was just, and we can disagree on that. I was just thinking this event could give them permission to openly speak about their own experience without fear of censure, because any Canadian that is at risk from mainstream media attack affecting their career, be they doctors or MPs or, likely teachers would be in the same boat, I expect. Because we're not allowed to have this conversation. It's 5 years. It's 5 years later, and we're still not allowed to have the conversation. Well, by gosh, I want to have the conversation, Shadoe.
Yeah, I agree.
I want to have it. And I want every alternative media person live streaming this, whether they can be there or not, and reporting on it, watching it and reporting on it, because you don't have to be in person to do that. But, I think we've got maybe 50 slots. We could have 50 alternative media people there. And then some of the witnesses are not going to be willing to be interviewed by media because they're going to be so wiped out physically just making it to that chair for their testimony. But some of them will be willing to be interviewed. And then having the media there, because it's not going to be, CBC interviewing them, but having enough alternative media there to interview them and get their story out, that privileges them. Right?
I'll tell you this. I think more and more people are going to start coming out and telling their story. But, we heard from the 3 women that I played in the video off the top of the show about medical gaslighting. And I understand that that's something that is unproven, at least in Canada. And maybe
I'll share you anecdotal something that totally validates that. But
okay.
And then we also need
remember,
to talk
everybody,
about the vaccine injury program.
This is anecdotal, everybody. So just a story that Shawn heard, something happened to a friend or an acquaintance.
No. It's systemic in this process.
Yes.
So it's pretty strong anecdotal evidence.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay. So, we've called witnesses at the NCI talking about medical gaslighting. And, we've had Michelle Wharton talk about that. Okay. We put a little intake form on the Allison Inquiry website, apply to be a witness. It's a very simple form, very few questions. We did that because we had learned in the past, if you have a long form, nobody applies. So you do a short form and they apply, and then you send them a longer form. And, it's funny, everyone wants to be involved. So, we're getting pressure from some other people and that you should have like a really long form so that, we can data crunch the data afterwards. You've got an opportunity here. We resisted that. And also being a lawyer, I don't want grading questions. I want tell me what happened questions that aren't leading. But in any event, we've got a longer form and it is a commitment. But we realized also after like the first day, we had so many applications. It's like, maybe we have time for 40 witnesses, maybe. So most of you aren't going to testify. But wouldn't it be nice if we could include your written testimony as part of the record? So now we're asking you, we change our we're asking you, will you consent to your answers to the written questions forming part of the record? But, so you apply, we have like this wave of about 500 people apply, and then we send them this form too. Okay, well, please fill in this more detailed form. So I don't know if you noticed that the moon crashed into the earth and caused a huge natural disaster. And we're all going to become extinct in the next 2 months because the sun, all the dust in that is. But a bigger problem was that we sent out Form 2, and I'm not meaning to ridicule, but we were surprised by the pushback from the vaccine injured.
What kind of pushback?
Oh, and we don't appreciate how this group has medical PTSD. It's a medical form. We're asking you for medical information. It's like a medical questionnaire. Well, obviously, they're having trauma because now they feel like they're interacting with the medical system.
Right.
Well, one of the questions is, did any of your doctors diagnose this as vaccine injured? And if so, who? Well, we have that on there because if we've got some identified doctors that have diagnosed you with vaccine injury, then we don't have to have volunteer doctors vet you to say, it's plausible that what they're saying is caused by the vaccine. So, at least when we put you on the stand, it's as robust as we can do with the resources we have. Well, my gosh, we don't want to get our doctors into trouble. That's actually very legitimate. And then when in their stories, even the ones I'm reading today, the people that are selected, it's like, well, because some of our questions are about your engagement with the medical system, and it's like 100%. I think I haven't come across a witness yet that they haven't been told it's in their head.
Wow.
Well, they can't walk anymore. Like within a couple of days, they will never walk again for the rest of their lives, a couple of days after the shot, and they're being told it's in their head and they're making it up. And it's 100% so far, where these just horrific symptoms that are now life-changing and disabling, and 100% of them are reporting that they're being, at one point, very early on, being told it's in their head and they should see a psychiatrist. And 100% are explaining how, well, they need treatments, but those treatments aren't allowed for vaccine injury, so they can't access them. These, so we're getting, through our form, very clear evidence that this gaslighting is absolutely real. If we needed it even more it was already pretty well established at the National Citizens Inquiry. But my word, I was shocked at just how fragile this community is. But it's been 5 years of suffering and 5 more years. And let's even go back to masks. I got kicked out of stores for not wearing masks. But the odd time when I just needed milk and eggs, I didn't want to go through that harassment, and I put a mask on and just went into the store, in and out quickly, because I didn't want the stress. Could you imagine if the doctors aren't believing? And think about the doctors. They're in trouble if they diagnose with vaccine injury.
Yeah.
They can't talk about it. They can't write it on their chart. I think you're vaccine injured. And then it's creating this vaccine injury program train wreck. Because the problem I've learned with the vaccine injury program is they had a very short intake form. They had part 1, part 2. So part 1 is you fill it out And, you might give them a paragraph on why you think it's a vaccine injury. Now, you're not a doctor and you don't know what they're looking for. And then part two, you got to get some medical doctor to fill it out, but almost every medical doctor won't say it's a vaccine injury. And then step three is they get your medical records. Well, they're getting your medical records from doctors who they'll do anything. They'll stand on their heads.
Yeah.
They'll put on a clown suit and wave at cars. They'll do anything but write vaccine injury in your medical records.
Yeah.
And then they have a panel of three then review your little paragraph and your medical records. And without asking you any questions to clarify, well, okay, you're saying it's a neurological thing and it started on this date, and they're thinking, well, maybe it should have started. They don't ask you, well, are there kind of other things that kind of are also neurological that might precede your inability to walk for the rest of your life? They don't interact with you to clarify, and then they refuse you. So there's been no expertise to guide you in. Your medical records aren't going to say it because we're in a system and they know it, where your doctors aren't going to say that, and then you're refused. Well, that is also evidence of this gaslighting and trauma. And the people, I was talking to one witness today, I was going to kill myself when I was refused. I'm on the bathroom floor weeping, and my mom has to talk me down. Because she has to live with her parents because she can't work, because she can't walk. And now some people, I did interview one that she's working from her wheelchair, but she's not in the chronic pain this other one is. And the other one, I can't get a job because I don't know day to day if I'm in so much pain, I'm not going to be able to work. So even though, she's qualified, she can't. It's tragic.
I still have a problem, Shawn, believing that so many doctors would go along with this nonsense without standing up and saying, why do you get into medicine in the first place? You do it probably, I think most doctors would say, to help people. And now they're stuck in this system where if they say, hey, I think this might be a vaccine injury, they're going to be completely censured by their society, their college, right? And we see that happen with Dr. Charles Hoff and several others across the country. But that was an instance of, what do we say, a dozen different doctors across the country who all got smacked down. What if 1,200 of them had all stood up at the same time and said, you know
it would
what?
have ended it. If enough nurses would have stood up so that the hospitals wouldn't have functioned, it would have ended it. If enough doctors would have stood up so that the hospitals couldn't function or the medical system would, be put on pause, it would have ended it. If enough dentists would have stood up, if enough lawyers would have stood up, if enough teachers, it's going to be a fascinating conversation with the doctors, with the nurses, once they are free to talk, to explain what was going on. Now I remember one at the NCI said quite clearly, I had to, I had to pay my mortgage. And we've had others report, the private conversation, doctor to doctor, that was safe. I've got to pay my mortgage. I got my kids in private school. These are real pressures. And, Shadoe, I didn't have to take the job to pay my mortgage, and my kids were adults. But what if they weren't adults? And what if it would have put us on the street? And what if me speaking out, as a lawyer then would have led to me losing my license? I'd like to think I would be that guy that stood up, but I wasn't there.
Yeah.
There was a financial consequence for sure. I closed my law office to volunteer with the NCI for 3 years, and they reimbursed me my travel expenses. But I'm sorry, I spent a lot of money doing it that I never asked to be reimbursed for. But
you weren't making money through
worried about my kids being on the street.
Yeah. Well, look, many people have made sacrifices. And so this is another divide that we find.
But
right?
I'm saying I wasn't worried about my kids being on the street. I wasn't facing that. So would I have done it if it meant that my kids would be on the street? I don't know, because you'd never know till you're there, right?
I think that you would have. And the reason I can say that quite obviously is because you gave up your medical or your legal practice for that long, spent money out of your own pocket for the NCI. And when you close your legal practice down, you're not getting any income in. So
No.
this is kind of a big deal, right?
It is funny because when, you're a lawyer, everyone just assumes you're rich. When, really, I was in the trenches fighting the machine, for impoverished people, but I wouldn't change a single thing. But I'm looking forward to hearing what those doctors and nurses have to say. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be quite the conversation.
Do you know Sarah Shujwanian? I have a rough time with her last name. She was a nurse in Ontario,
I don't
and
think so.
she was one of the Canada's frontline nurses. And
Okay, I may know her then, and the last name's not working with me.
Yeah, you'd probably know her face. And she last week got slapped with a $297,000 fine from the Ontario College of Nurses. This after 5 years of lawfare.
I'm pretty confident I do know her. So 290,000. Did that include also the costs of the proceedings?
Yes.
Yeah, which in itself is just a complete injustice, because what the message then is that if you stand up to any professional discipline proceedings, even if you and there's any chance of losing, you will be destroyed. And the problem is that the people that are appointed by the college, they will understand actually that the college is seeking to recover its costs, including your wage, with a verdict. It's the unconscious bias is outrageous, and penalties are meant to deter, not to destroy. But we've so long left any modicum of justice or reasonableness that it's absurd, and most of these colleges shouldn't exist anyway. But no, that's a tragedy. And so how is because she's a young lady.
Yes.
How is she supposed to pay, $290,000 in after-tax income?
Impossible.
When her, ability to practice her profession has been taken away?
Yeah. Well, it's obvious they know this is never going to be paid, but it's.
And what was she doing? She was speaking out about vaccine injury and vaccine danger. And she just got penalized now in 2026. So that college is still upholding the narrative when she should have been exonerated, and she should have been publicly praised. It's 2026. Now, why are Canadians putting up with that? And, why aren't they, storming the Ontario College of Nurse building and saying this is so unacceptable, you people are so out of touch, and this is a dangerous precedent, and it will silence nurses that have an ethical obligation. Nurses used to be taught that they had an ethical obligation to advocate for their patients, even if it wasn't a popular position, but they were supposed to stand for what they believe for. I know that. I used to live with a nursing professor of ethics. So why aren't they being stormed?
Because people are sick and tired. It's funny. I put
no, it's our fault. Why, Shadoe? Why is your audience putting up with this? Surely we're not afraid anymore. Are you afraid of being called a vaccine denier or engaging on Facebook with this nonsense? Where were you when I was saving lives in the emergency ward? Really? Is that the best you've got now? Because people are dying, and and the emperor has no clothes, and this is absolutely ridiculous. Like, really, are we still putting up with this? Are we allowing the Sarahs of the world to be destroyed by their colleges today? Really?
Yes. Yeah, it's
Here
happening.
we
Man.
are. Constable Bruce, was that 2 months ago?
Yeah.
Really?
That's another one.
You know, they should have to the Ontario, Ottawa police should have to disconnect their phone lines, which they need for emergency calls, because it just doesn't stop ringing with people saying, I'm angry about the Bruce decision. You guys are not allowing police officers discretion, and you better open that investigation because she was right.
She was right. When we talk about, we talked about it earlier in the show when the Conservative MP, Dean Allison, decided he wanted to do this. And there was a little bit of concern that he was going to be attacked and eaten alive by the left-wing corporate media. I sit here and think, okay, so how many inquiries have there been in the United States, led by Senator Ron Johnson and others, asking very similar questions, I'm sure, to the things that you'll be asking the people who will be testifying in September at the Allison Inquiry. That's been going on in the United States for 3, maybe 4 years now, and they're still looking for answers, but they have achieved a lot of results in the time they've been asking.
Mm-hmm.
The Canadian media must understand that, we have seen that stuff. There's many thousands, even millions of Canadians who have seen that stuff. We understand exactly what's going on, and it was no different in Canada.
Okay. The mainstream media is watching this Shadoe Davis because they're so afraid of the Allison Inquiry. And so let's just say to the mainstream media now, I mean, the Rasmussen poll, that the majority of Canadians believe that the vaccine caused harm. Like, you're losing credibility, and you will become worthless and non-relevant unless you embrace this. And that's the reality. Like, there'll always be that very small percentage, but they're not enough for you to have any influence. And the only way for you to salvage this is to lead the conversation, which includes, you basically it becoming apparent that you have some culpability in this. But it's 2026. Isn't it going to get worse if you let this go longer?
I mean, the first thing, as you pointed out earlier, Shawn, is identifying the problem, or identifying there is even a problem, and then trying to identify how to solve it. And I think this is a great step forward in that regard in this country. And I certainly hope that many millions of people across the country watch the inquiry. I'll be streaming it. And I will try to get out to Ottawa myself and be a part of it in that briefing room, in that conference room, because there's nothing like being there. Are you going to be allowing members of the public in for these, or is this going to be strictly a...
So the...
Shawn froze. So we'll see if we can get him back here. We'll wait 30 seconds or so. And if we can't get him back, we'll move on to the next thing. We've got one more thing for you guys tonight. If you could reboot there, Shawn, that'd be awesome. Well, at least it didn't freeze on a terrible facial expression. Okay, Shawn is gone from the show tonight, but he's doing yet again another fantastic job with the Allison Inquiry, which is running September 8th through 11th in Ottawa. The website is right here. I'm going to put it up on the screen for you guys. COVIDtestimony.com. That is COVIDtestimony.com. But if you go to Google or any other search engine, what you'll find is typing in the Allison Inquiry will take you right to this website. Also on X, you can follow at Allison Inquiry, and on Facebook, follow Dean Allison for more information. This is going to be hopefully, 800 applications already in for this. And there's no way they're going to be able to hear 800 different testimonies over the period of 4 days. So Teresa says that their internet is spoiling. So I guess that's it for tonight with Shawn, but that's cool. I mean, an hour and a half is long enough, right? But hopefully they get some of the best testimonies, and hopefully people listen with an open heart and an open mind. And Shawn is back for one last statement. Teresa just texted me and said, Shawn, that your internet is crapping out a little bit, but I'm glad you're back for at least a final comment here. But we can't hear you.
Sorry.
There you
If
are.
I turn my mic on, it's one of
Yes,
those funny
that's
mics. It has to be on to work.
right.
I'll have to get a new one. So you were asking, can the public attend?
Yes.
So this is on Parliament Hill in a parliamentary committee room where everyone has to go through security to get in. So the public can't just show up unless they're on a list. And we've got a limited amount of space in that room, which we want to fill up with alternative media. So it doesn't mean that we can't put some members of the public on the list if when we get closer, it's clear that, there's going to be some space for the public. So I think, just interact with us through email or whatever to let us know. We have made alternative arrangements in case, somehow the government manages to get us out of that room. We're going to press ahead with the inquiry. But if we manage to be able to stay in that committee room, then we will have a venue very close where, the public could watch and interact and all of that. So we're not sure what that looks like, Shadoe. And then, also to be perfectly honest, because we're a small group of volunteers, even the idea of having to organize that right now is daunting. But yeah, so we don't know what that looks like for the public. We would love to have, the lawn of Parliament Hill to be filled and there to be big screens and the whole thing. But, we're not organizing that if that's going to happen.
Right.
So,
how is this going to be executed? Because I did check out the NCI when you guys were in Winnipeg, and I watched a lot of it. There were people from the public there who were able to watch, but the commissioners all asked questions. And you pointed out earlier in the show tonight that these MPs who will be attending this inquiry will just be sitting there listening.
No, they won't. Actually, it'll be the opposite. So MPs are accustomed to a committee format where witnesses are very limited in time for their presentation, and then the MPs, flesh out the evidence with questions, and that's going to be the format. So I will be leading witnesses, but let's say we have a witness for half an hour, a vaccine injured witness that we slotted for half an hour. What we anticipate is me leading that witness for 10 to 12 minutes at maximum, and then MPs having the rest of the time to engage with the witness. So the MPs will have more control than anyone else over how the conversation with the witness goes and what to focus on. So when we're inviting MPs to come, I mean, this will be a format that they're familiar with and comfortable with, and work with all the time, because all MPs, do committee work. It's one of their roles and responsibilities as MPs. So we're adapting to their world, not the other way around.
That's interesting. And I'm wondering now, we say, okay, so Liberal MPs, all MPs are welcome. They can come and ask questions. I'm wondering if some Liberal MPs will actually try and storm the inquiry.
Well, but then again, that's what happens. So, but really, you're expecting a Liberal MPs to 30 or 40 to come in and sit around a committee room and belittle a vaccine injured person. Yeah, and Teresa says in the background in a wheelchair, as many of them will be. Well, okay, if they want to do that, then that's the way it goes. I actually think that what would be more likely is that they would ask questions, and it's okay to challenge witnesses and that, but I, these are people too. I get that we're all divided, but there's a bubble here. We have an opportunity to actually have a conversation that's needed. It's needed to heal the nation. We're obviously still divided on this. If somehow after 5 years we actually can't have a conversation, if you think the vaccine didn't cause any injuries, well, surely people aren't going to die of COVID now you're not worried about COVID vaccine hesitancy now in the summer of 2026, isn't it safe now for us to have this conversation? We got to have it because so many people have lost faith in the system. So this should be the time you're jumping at it if you actually believe. But, you know, if we're really just trying to do it to avoid the conversation, to keep some narrative going, every institution's going to lose credibility here. You know, Shadoe, I'm a lawyer. I wonder, I've just been itching to write, you know, articles for the law journals, and I've been itching. All lawyers in all provinces have to have continuing education, itching to volunteer to teach a course on how we've taken judicial notice of a ghost. Because during COVID, when, you know, parents were having an argument in family court, does the child get the COVID vaccine or not? Almost every court at the Court of Appeal level, Ontario was the worst in my opinion, said, listen, when Health Canada has approved a vaccine, that it's so well known that we don't have to prove it. Let's take judicial notice that that means the vaccine is safe and effective. So that's now our starting point. And the parent that is opposing that vaccine. So we're basically creating a legal presumption that it's in the child's best interest. And that's the test. The court wants to do what's best for the child. We're basically creating a legal presumption. We're taking judicial notice. It's been proven safe. So we don't have to worry about harming the child, and effective. It's going to help the child. So we've basically directed the courts to take judicial notice. It's safe and effective. Well, why didn't the court read the law? Because we have in our drug regulations, starting at C.08.002, the drug test for regular drugs, where you do have to give the minister substantial evidence of safety and efficacy. But the COVID-19 vaccines were exempted from that, and it was published in the Canada Gazette. The law was clear. Shadoe, to get a COVID-19 vaccine approved, you didn't even have to submit your safety data. What are we talking about proving it's safe? You didn't even have to give the safety data. And when it talked about safety data, it wasn't like substantial evidence proving safety or whatever the language is for regular drugs. It was the known safety data. But you didn't even have to give that to get approved because the test didn't require proof of safety. In fact, the word safety isn't mentioned. And you didn't have to prove it worked, which we call efficacy. That wasn't in the test. In fact, the word efficacy wasn't mentioned. In fact, you didn't actually have to prove anything if you read the test. There just had to be an argument, and the test literally was a political direction to approve. So, but I'm just asking as a lawyer, is it possible that I could get that what the law was published? It's anyone can look it up. Any lawyer, we're all trained in legal research. Like in 15 minutes, you could check that what I'm saying is true, that the COVID-19 vaccines were legally exempted from the regular test and safety wasn't considered and efficacy wasn't considered. And yet we've got political, directives from Court of Appeals saying, well, it's a judicial, it's so known that these vaccines were proven to be safe and effective. Let's take judicial notice. I don't know if it's safe to do that yet. So it's a crazy world. I think after this Allison Inquiry, I will take the risk and see what happens. But we've got to, why are we afraid? Why are we putting up with this nonsense? Are we not making fools out of our country? And really, we're not taking care of these people that are injured in July of 2020. Isn't this funny?
The longer it goes on.
In a sad way, but I mean, really, what are we doing here?
The longer this goes on, the worse we look as a country.
Yes.
But, we do have a Liberal MP going back, 4 years now, Anthony Housefather is his name, who actually said in Parliament that the vaccine never went through any testing, that it never went through any safety checks or any efficacy. He said that because we were Shawn, we were in a pandemic.
Yes.
We had to have something. Like how reckless is
Right.
that?
But here's the problem is, so let's say we were in a pandemic, okay, which many of your audience won't believe, but let's say we were, and let's say there was all this hysteria, and let's say in the midst of all of that, the government was in hysteria too, and there was all this political pressure to do something, and let's say we made a mistake by basically exempting it from safety and efficacy and creating a mandatory direction to approve, based really on uncertainty. So let's say we did all of that. Well, okay. But then once we're through that crisis, why did we put this non-safety and efficacy test permanently into our drug regulations for COVID-19 vaccines? Within the last 6 months, we changed the name to, public interest drugs or something like that. But the only drugs in Canada that currently are still available to the general public that are exempted from safety and efficacy being proven on July 22nd, 2026 are the COVID-19 vaccines. Why are they still on the market? Health Canada has approved them for use starting at 6 months of age. So this week, some mothers and fathers of Canadian babies that are now 6 months of age are having their children injected with a vaccine that has not been proven to be safe and has not been proven to be effective. Well, and they're exempted from the law. They're the only drugs on the market for general population that are exempted from this in 2026.
They have not done
what's going on, Shadoe?
Well, I mean, there's all kinds of speculation. I suppose we could say there's big pharma manipulation of doctors, of nurses, of politicians, of people in institutions.
I think it's preventing the conversation, because if they didn't continue the exemption so that the COVID-19 vaccines, like, they have to continue to be exempted from proving safety or efficacy, or you got to pull them from the market. And if you pull them from the market, people are going to go, why did you pull it from the market? Oh, well, we never approved safety or efficacy. Now we're having that conversation they really don't want to have.
Yeah.
So I think it's political expediency, and they no longer really care that the uptake of these vaccines is almost zero. They're probably relieved because there's no way they can escape liability now that those vaccines are on the market. Like, you tell me how this isn't either culpable homicide or criminal negligence causing death, except for Health Canada isn't liable because they're exempted. It must be driving some people in Health Canada. They must be going nuts. I don't know why we haven't gotten a whistleblower yet. Like, we'll put you on the stand at the Allison Inquiry. Like, come. Because there's got to be a lot of moral distress, because people are people, Shadoe.
Yeah.
And people are people. And I'm sorry, in the medical community, there has to be a lot of distress. And in the Health Canada, there has to be a lot of distress, because the reality is a lot of those people want to do a good job and want to protect us. And, so I invite any whistleblowers to contact us. We'll put you on the stand. So
that's an interesting phrase you just mentioned there. Moral distress. How many people out there know exactly what happened over the past 5 years and still have said nothing? How do they sleep at night? How do they look in the mirror? Now's your chance. Now's your chance. And you know what? Right now, nobody is going to judge you for your lack of action in the last 5 years. But you got to stand up at some point. You got to do the right thing.
Well, and we can't put every doctor and every nurse, we can't sanction them. So, I mean, the reality is, Shadoe, the reality is we're just going to have to figure out what happened. We are going to have to fix the system so that we can trust it again and go on. Like, that's the reality. And isn't it going to be better for you? Like, I can't imagine being a doctor. They're getting so hemmed in that if they don't adhere to these little standards of practice, like, I was interviewing a doctor earlier this week, on the natural health thing for NHPPA Talk Forum. And it's like, no, they're so hemmed in. Like, they get disciplined and harassed if, the example there is like, there's a lot of evidence if somebody's having thyroid problems. Before we had, I forget the name of the drug, Synthroid or something. I'm sorry, I'm sure I butchered it, but there's a patented drug. So the standard of practice is now to use the patented drug. But before that, we just use desiccated thyroid from pigs or cows. And like, there's so much evidence that works better without side effects. But, he was giving an example that he was getting disciplined for doing that. Like, I couldn't imagine being a doctor today. If you decided I wanted to have an integrated practice where, really I am pushing my patients to, eat right and supplement and stuff like that. So I don't have any nutritional worries. And I am encouraging them to do detox profiles or protocols. So I'm not worried about toxic overload. And then, when you come to me for what's going to be fewer problems, as a medical doctor, I'll try and figure out, well, what's the best thing to do. But to feel that you would actually get disciplined for stepping, because that's not the standard of practice. That's not the focus. Like, I couldn't imagine, because I'm guessing that most of these people, because the doctors I talk to, on COVID issues and this, they want to help people as best they know how. And it's got to be like, surely they want to be freed from this.
I was just reminded by one of our viewers in comments. You just asked, why are these things still on the market? Like, we're talking Moderna, we're talking Pfizer. A few years ago, they removed the AstraZeneca vaccine, did they not? Because
they did early on because of problems with myocarditis.
Okay, so that kind of went unnoticed by the left-wing corporate media, and nobody else said anything about it. But I recall Dr. Joss Reimer, who's now the head of Health Canada, saying in Manitoba, when she was the head of the vaccine task force in 2021, that you can go ahead and mix whatever vaccine you want to mix. It's all right. She said these words: go ahead and have a Pfizer, and then go ahead and have an AstraZeneca. And you know what? As long as you get the shot, you're going to be good to go. That's what she said. And then she also mentioned, I believe, we're in the middle of the greatest medical experiment in history.
Yeah,
which is us.
And we are, and this is why we can't tolerate this any longer, is because a whole bunch of us are suffering. A whole bunch of us are dying. We have an obligation to reduce the suffering and reduce the death. We have a moral obligation. We will be judged on, our inaction. And so how can we not be standing up now? How can we not? Like, who cares if somebody gets mad at you in the grocery aisle? Step into that conversation. Like, we're the majority, and, we're herd animals. And most of us, we were silenced during COVID because we didn't want to be ridiculed. Well, the minority long COVID vaccines are safe and effective crowd need to understand that we think they're being ridiculous now. Like, turn it on its head, turn the psychology on its head, because they are the minority now.
Yeah, well, we get enough people to say that, and those people back down pretty quick. Shawn, thank you for all of the work that you and Teresa have been doing. Thank you for putting this thing together. Please pass our thanks along to MP Allison for having the bravery to present this to his caucus and for getting this whole thing going. I'm going to keep talking about this over the next couple of months until we actually get to the inquiry dates. Go ahead.
And Shadoe, I'm expecting you to visit your MP and encourage him to attend the inquiry.
He's public enemy number one as far as
No, don't think that way. Don't think that way, because he's got to have this we all have to have we have to reach this point where we have the conversation. So, you literally even could have a non-angry, honest conversation with them and just say, no, but it's time. We have to have the conversation. Like,
yeah.
All the arguments you have, it doesn't matter. There's just too many people that have lost confidence.
Yes.
We can disagree all we want, but we have to have the conversation now.
I could go into that conversation with the best of intentions, I think, for the first 60 seconds. And once I saw a smug sneer come across his face, I might lose my shit real quick. Sorry for the language. Thank you, Shawn.
And thank you for what you do. Keep it up.
All right, man. We'll talk to you again. Thank you. There is Shawn Buckley with the Allison Inquiry. Again, September 8th through 11th, Parliament Hill in Ottawa. And I'm going to be talking about this, you guys, over the next couple of months, more and more, as more and more people submit their applications to testify. He said already 800. I made the mistake of saying 58,000 earlier in the show, as you probably heard. And that was actually the amount of vaccine injuries, deaths or otherwise, that have been reported in Canada. And we obviously think that that number is low. One more thing on the show.